Hi everyone, today is Tuesday, June 6th, 2017, and today I'm actually going to do a series of videos that I've been promising to do for at least a year and a half, maybe close to a couple of years, but I haven't so far because the level of discomfort I've had concerning not the topic itself, but my concerns about this sort of information getting out there, shared beyond the trans community, and yet part of this is because I've actually written an article about my prosthetic penis, and it's something that's so new for a lot of people that I think sometimes there are misconceptions around it, and so I'm going to be talking about my penis in this series of videos. So if that's something that would be uncomfortable for you, so I would say then don't watch this video or the series of videos I'm going to set up in the playlist to follow. So that word of warning to let you know that you might want to turn this off now or something. So here we go. I'm going to be talking mainly about the Peacock Gen 2 3-in-1 prosthetic stand-to-pee, or what we call an STP, silicone phallus, so if you want to put it that way. One of the reasons I can feel maybe a little more comfortable talking about now is because I would say it's kind of like it's no longer my penis, because I don't use this one. I haven't in at least a year, maybe closer to a couple of years, and so and the reason I'm talking about this one also is because it's the one that I did write about in that article. And so, since it's the one no longer in use, I guess I don't quite feel so exposed showing it and talking about it. But the reason to show it is, talking about the materiality is one thing, but to actually, not to feel it, but to, I guess, to kind of see it might help in some of the ways to for some of the things I'm going to talk about, the issues of using a device like this. And so so this is the Peacock Gen 2 3-in-1 prosthetic, and I will say one thing I've noticed when I unpack this, because it has just been, it's got just a little drawstring bag that is kept inside a drawer. And an interesting thing that has happened over time is that these devices, as opposed to, say, a I don't want to say biological, but I would rather say like maybe a flesh penis, is that like that a cis man has, is that for a cis man, his penis grows and shrinks depending on circumstances, whereas in a silicone prosthetic, right, it's always the same size. And yet over time, this actually started off, and I did measure it because I was make sure this actually used to be 5 inches long. It is now closer to 3 3/4. So, over time, and the information on this device, did say basically had they kind of gave like a life expectancy, right, of 2 years, And I took that as far as something like durability, like breakdown of things like tears. I've heard of things like that. I didn't really kind of expect that actually that would kind of account for things like shrinkage and that sort of thing. And of course, people might say, well, why would you get something that big? And there's a few reasons. One is it all depends on, what someone gets as a prosthetic penis. Kind of depends on their needs. So, this is a 3-in-1, which means it's meant for packing, or basically creating a bulge within the pants, so that there is, basically from the outside, it doesn't seem like there's something so much different between a trans man and a cis man. But it's not just for appearance, right? It's that, for some trans men like me, right, it was necessary because for me, there's always felt like there's this sort of phantom trace, that of something that was missing, and that's part of the dysphoria. And so to have something like this helped me feel as though maybe that part of me that I always felt should have been there was there. Now, for others, it actually, I've heard, some say it actually makes their dysphoria worse, and that makes me feel terrible, because I thought, wow, I needed something that made that go away, and I can imagine how it would be if it made it actually worse. And so if that's all that's needed, and I had my first device was just a packer, and it was a solid packer, and so the length was much smaller, right? It was more the size of a flaccid penis, and I actually I think I might be stored somewhere, but that was very helpful. And yet, over time, I realized I needed more functionality, and so one of the other functions with this is, that's why it's called an STP, a stand-up P device, is that it can actually be used because it's hollow. The shaft is hollow, and there is a hole at the end in order to urinate with it standing up, especially for something like in a public men's room. And we'll go in later about why that might be necessary. I know some people will say that's not even necessary to do, but at times it is. So that's another reason for something like this, another type of device. And then the third is they say play, right? So basically that it's supposed to be usable for sexual encounters. And I've heard others, who've done maybe reviews on these sorts of devices. As far as what that's like, I can't attest to that. So, and that's not really what this was about anyway. Although, I think a lot of times just to talk about a penis, or to have a visual of one, especially one that, because it only comes in one side. Itself is only one size. The idea then is that it is erect, and therefore that its main purpose would then be sexual. And at least in my case, that's not the case. That's not true. So, all right. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually something I've been promising to do for a long time, which is to talk about for trans men who are curious about using this sort of device, and what needs to go into happening for this sort of use, to set it up. I'll talk about that next.